Hello, hello. That's Elvis Parsley, or is it Basil? No, I'm not quite sure. It may be Elvis Oregano. Whoever that is, wow, he nailed that song. That was an original from, I believe, Simon and Garfunkel, Bridge Over Troubled Waters, and Elvis remade it. Aretha Franklin remade it. I mean, a lot of people did. Um, Fantastic. That was a lot of fun to start today. Hey, today's going to be a very unique day because what we're going to do is I'm extraordinarily busy working on Unity Tour stuff, but I want to give you a gift. There was a phenomenal interview. It was a very, very, very long interview that I did with Juan Savin way back in the day. And it was interesting because when I started reviewing this interview about 3.5 years ago, I noticed that there was something very, very important in it in regards to President Trump and David versus Goliath. So I made a video out of it, a film, I guess you would say, and it was I think very impactful, but it was deleted on virtually every platform, and I didn't even think it was that controversial, but maybe it hit something. So I was reviewing it a little bit today because I was looking to play something unique for you, and I was like blown away how on target we were. That was about 3.5 years ago, 3.5, almost 4 years ago. So it's absolutely amazing. So I found it in the archives here on Rumble, and even though it hadn't had very many views, you may not have seen it because it was deleted on all my channels. Couldn't even get it up on BitChute at the time. So we're gonna play that for you. But while you're here, could you like, follow, and share? And let's look in the chat and see how many people subjected themselves to watching the Democratic National Convention yesterday. Was it just the most heartfelt, amazing thing you've ever seen? Yeah, it was just lovely. What I did notice, which is good, scary, and different, I'm not quite sure though, is uh, the it was weird. For anybody that's awake, it was really weird. In fact, I was talking to our friend Alan Fountain, and he even thought how some of the patriots may get triggered because i- Hillary Clinton was up there, and so on and so forth. So let me just tell you, if you haven't seen it, what I saw, or if you saw it, maybe you'll have similar thoughts. So uh, I saw a few speakers. It seemed very fake. I got demonic feelings from it. Some of the people on stage were actually seemed like they were possessed or controlled. So if you go with the hat narrative, you would say they're all just good actors. Well, that would be great. Maybe they are. If you're going with the black hat narrative, I'm thinking there's some demonic shit going on there. So the main theme was their platform is we want abortions. That's pretty much it. We want full scale abortions all the way across the board. And even a moderate would look at that going, that's just weird. So they have no platform whatsoever. They lied about everything. Best economy ever, low inflation. Trump's got his Agenda 25, which we know is not true. It was lie after lie after lie after lie, and I'm like, wow, this is their platform. Are they serious? Maybe it's just a big, huge disclosure. And then the illustrious Hillary Clinton comes up, and the first thing I said is, I'm like, wait a second. She looks younger than she did in 2016. Much younger. How is that possible? Right? It's not. And then you look at things and it looks like she could be, I mean, some weird stuff under her eyes. Maybe there's a mask there. Definitely shorter. She got the intonations on the voice, but it looks like old Hillary. So it was a trip. It was really a trip. And then I got to the point where after watching The Liars, I said, "Well, let me hang in because I want to see Joe Biden speak because I predicted that he would be on his game. If the deep state's running him, they would have him drugged up for a short time, and I believe that the if the white hats are running everything, they want this to appear close so as to keep people motivated to go out for President Trump is what I believe is going to be happening actually. So I believe the narrative works on both sides. That's the scary part. If all the polls and the elections look close, then it's very easy to steal it because they're going to say, "I told you so." If all of them look close, it's also easier to motivate all the conservatives or the people for Trump to get out and vote and just absolutely overwhelm it. So it's weird. This is these diametrically opposed messages that we see on both sides, right? So either narrative makes sense right now. So that being said, so I'm watching it, and then Ashley Biden gets up there, which was actually a shock to me. I didn't know ahead of time. And I'm like, are you serious? How is she going to get up? Took showers with her. I'm like, how is this even possible? And I got physically sick watching it. And I don't know if I got physically sick because these are demons running the show or because her acting was grossing me out. But either way, think about this. You have somebody in her diary admits to being uncomfortable because her as a preteen her father is making her take showers with her. Disgusting. Yet she goes up there and praises him like he's just an amazing father, and she had such a joy growing up with her. And I was like, wow. So if it's part of the movie, I understand how they would have to do this. If it's not, that means that the deep state has somehow convinced this lady to absolutely lie, and who knows how much money they paid her or what threats or what promises they would give her to do this, because anybody's that's gone through that form of molestation, I would assume it would be heart-wrenching to do a speech like that. He's always a joke even before the fourth or fifth body double, but he got up and he did okay, and then towards the end, of course, he started slurring his words and so on and so forth. So it is what it is. For those that think that Big Mike's going to suddenly come in and so on and so forth, I find that hard to believe only because uh, between Biden and Hillary and everybody else, they were praising Kamala at the highest level. So it would be kind of weird for everybody to flip and try to get in a Gavin Newsom or somebody else. Although I think Gavin Newsom's been groomed for this position. So that being said, with this whole thing, it comes down to probably the most important thing is we need to pay attention and we need to get the word out. Now we got to get into our communities and do the best we can, right? But I want to leave you, or not leave you. I'm going to play the film here shortly because I think it's important, and I believe you'll find the end of it pretty inspirational, and how we can truly make a difference. But I think we would all agree at this time it's kind of now or never. It really is. So let me, without, like they say, without further ado, well, I do want to mention really quick. Thank you to Matt Geiger and Verity Metals. VerityMetals.com has done such an amazing gift to us to help us get through the Unity tour and sponsor this show and everything else. Because I can tell you, we're going to take a financial hit. It's very clear, but he's helping, really helping with a big chunk of that. So before we get started on the film and enjoy it, I'll come on after the film so we could discuss a little bit. But I'll be working in the meantime while it's playing. It's only about 40 minutes, I think. So let's get started.
I really sincerely believe if that election would have went forward and he would have been placed back in office, we wouldn't have the grassroots awakening that we're having, where we are learning as a people that we have to claim our sovereignty ourselves.
Well, let me put it to you this way. People want what they can't have. Somebody rips you off, you want it back. I don't think people necessarily fully grasped they weren't able to get Hillary in, and they tried. So they had to go to some level that was so far out of whack with reality that it just, it was to an extreme that's almost incomprehensible, a blatancy. And even there, Trump still had him, nailed. Now there's those that say, no, that's not true, that Trump lost, blah, blah, blah. Well, let's see what happens. Yeah. We have people in there from Nevada, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Wisconsin, I think 2 more states beyond that in Maricopa County in Arizona, viewing their methodology in doing this recount in Maricopa County, the stuff that they found. Yeah. That's primarily focused on the paper ballots, but the electronic ballots also. So all these states have, problems in their election system, and they want to go back and do a recount also. There's people all upset and excited that now that the electors have voted from each state and found that Biden was the winner, there's nothing in the Constitution to reverse that. I actually agree. Now there's some that say, well, they can recall their electors, et cetera, and have a constitutional crisis. If that draws attention as a nation to the problem, that's fantastic. But how disruptive is that for America? And in fact, one of the things, do you want civil war? There was somebody that was making some statements based on a private conversation I had here just recently in a private meeting, and that got out into by a particular person into the rest of this world. And they're making a big thing out of that, what happens behind the firewall in the last days of the President Trump's administration, and what people even close to the president were trying to get him to do, to sign an insurrection act and do various legal things to challenge the vote. Even coming up on January 6th, when Pence could have sent it back to the states to relook at everything and not accepted the vote. The reality is, and this is hard for people to get their mind around, even great folks, knowledgeable folks who are in the office advising the president. The reality is, had President Trump taken certain actions that he could have, following that December 18th meeting, coming up on January 6th, exactly what our opponents want. They want us fighting each other. Then the bad karma's on us, not them for what they did, because we decided to have this fight. We didn't understand it. We went after each other. We tore the country apart. The reality is, this isn't a civil war situation. We're in a revolutionary war. It was external forces that came against America in a digital 9/11, a digital Pearl Harbor, who attacked us from the outside on our vote system. The leaders of their choice to control you as a people, well, they didn't use missiles. They didn't use bullets. They used digital missiles, digital bullets, paper in the right places to get people into office that suit their purposes. So at the end of the day, we as Americans are being, if they get their way, are going to be controlled by the leaders of their choice to do their will in our land, to force us to do their thing. That's the military thing. It's a weapon of mass destruction. The is a weapon of mass destruction against America, and that's what we're fighting.
Yeah, well, I would agree. I don't think it's the end all be all to get Trump back in office. In fact, I think I'm definitely a Trump fan, but I think we idolize people too much, and there's a much bigger picture at play here. Now, we may diverge on something, because I do believe that the military, without an insurrection act signed, I believe they have the right to come back in and at least reintroduce new elections.
Let me clarify for you. It's a hugely important point. The military operates under the authority of the commander-in-chief.
Right.
Congress and the courts and the administrative side handle the policing actions. Yes. So we have policing actions internally to protect us from those that would rob us, steal us blind, force us to do things evil. And the police protect us from the monsters within. And then we organize for building bridges, making the streets straight, getting traffic lights in, and covering the cost of it through taxes and like that, from the administrative side through the presidency. But the person that we elect to be president of the United States also is the person who wears the hat of the commander-in-chief and is in control of military forces to protect us from threats external to the country, from foreign nations seeking to impose their will on us, from militarized threats. So you have a policing action to keep the peace internally from the robbers that maybe fellow citizens are working on our soil. And you have the military to protect us from monsters from the outside who would seek to come to take a spoil, to come over the wall. We empower this military force to protect us from without, and this policing force to protect us from within. That's what the Constitution's all about. And you know, us coming together as people and as states, a republic, to band together to keep the peace and to keep our goods safe from, you know, thieves and marauders, pirates and enemies, so that we can enjoy our life, live our life. And if you know, those are two separate hats that the president gets, then our enemies have succeeded. Up until the moment that Biden was certified as the winner and given the oath to be president of the United States, up until that moment, there was no lawful reason for the military to inject itself into the conversation. The Congress and the courts could have acted to protect the Constitution of the United States, which is the contract between the voters, the citizens, and its government. When they failed to protect the people, to protect the Constitution of the people, then the military at that moment, its need to protect stepped in, because the vote outside the country. And by the way, MI6 is at the core of it, with other countries and other NATO persons involved, but it's primarily orchestrated out of MI6. The dossier against Trump, those were all MI6 operatives. MI5 was involved. Right. Stroke and Page went to City of London to do the little scam to overturn this, because it's globalists. operating through the City of London within the banking empires and the royal families that have been behind this attack on America.
I would contend the Vatican and CCP played a part too.
Well, but again, you're into the banks, and that's part of it.
Right.
If you understand the origins of even the CCP,
right,
you would see that there's a globalist activity there that created them, and then you have interlocking relationships on the banking side with the Vatican and their controls. So there's no argument for me on their involvement, but the point of orchestration. And by the way, I'll just mention the Vatican banks, all that money that went into Iran that Obama put in there, that cash that was supposedly repayment, from, the 70s and 80s, all the way back to the Shah. That money, only a small portion of it stayed in Iran. That was the cash that went in on the planes to pay off all the mullahs. Most of it was digitally transferred, and it went from Iran to Ukraine, and then from Ukraine banking interests down to the Vatican Bank, and then out to the world to promote political players and corporations that were part of this CCP move and part of this particular political move to go against specifically President Trump and the United States, to break the back, including the economy of the United States, because they have a globalist objective, a globalist direction that they're going to go. If President Trump had acted the way the people in that room wanted him to act on the 18th of December of 2020, what would have happened is that you would have had the beginnings of a degeneration into a civil war, because you didn't have enough of the numbers to one side. It was too evenly divided in this argument whether or not the election was this way or that way. So anything Trump did, anything President Trump did, would have been construed as overreaching, as him acting as king, him somehow arbitrarily, unilaterally making some decision, and then he would have to defend himself, and the people around him would have to defend himself, and you'd have literally had the country go into some type of civil breakdown, everybody taking sides, but probably at the end of the day, ultimately in a very militarized way. It might not have been instant, but today, 6 months later, it probably would be coming into the summer months, you'd be going into civil war.
Yeah.
As it is, his decision not to do that, as painful as it was, and people thinking that he wasn't smart enough to see what was going on, of course he was. Of course he had great advice. Of course he knew all these things were going, it's naive to think that he didn't get it or was afraid or weak or whatever. Had nothing to do with the decision. He held his breath, paused, and let the situation to continue to develop. I'll serve no wine before it's time. Okay. You ever try to pop a pimple before it's ready to go? Every teenager in the world knows.
Yep.
Okay. Things needed to ripen a bit.
Yeah.
And these creeps are pimples on our ass. Well, we've let them ripen a bit. But I can tell you what, it's not going to be much longer. We're going to pop that puppy. And these guys, just because the data wasn't well enough developed, they raced to get it done. Pence didn't defend us by sending it back, which was a great affront to the country. We knew there was a problem, and he was in the position to slow things down, and he didn't.
Right.
And so now all of these problems have developed to this level now, but that means people had to educate themselves and understand it, so that as these facts come to the fore, this won't be about a civil war. A civil war is more evenly divided. The reality is the numbers of people, even in the last few weeks, the numbers have flipped by about 20% of the total voter population now believe, and then will be more supportive of what actually has to happen, which, by the way, it was always going to have to be a military response, and that's where the authorities are. And it's not about a revote or a recount. We know what the numbers are. It would actually be a crime against America to do a revote or a recount at this point in time. We know what the actual flip was and the mechanism. And that's why the military's investigation, just like the one that was supposed to be done by the Director of National Intelligence, was also a 45-day count. Their responsibility didn't come until the moment that Biden was sworn, and they were required to hand over the role of commander-in-chief.
Right.
Remember, Biden hasn't flown on an aircraft designated as AF-1. That's a military designation.
Right.
You had Biden and Harris on the same aircraft.
Oh no, and it's so obvious. But we've been manipulated for so long, and that kind of tags into my point. And I'd like you to touch onto this. It's amazing that people want this thing to be solved within just a few years, when we've been going through this for hundreds of years, maybe even thousands. And it's going to, it will take an act of God to flip it. And I think God is on our side and working with us for sure. But it's naive for anybody to believe that this is going to flip immediately. I also believe we need to go through this pain. We need this pain so we can not repeat this in the futures.
Remember when they sojourned out in the Sinai desert, and then they finally went into the promised land. What was it that was the big obstacle in going into the promised land? Why didn't they go in there in the first place? Because when they sent spies in there, the spies went in and said, it's a land full of milk and honey and plenty. Just one problem. Oh, shit. There's giants there, and we were but as grasshoppers in their sight, even up to the time of David with Goliath. And by the way, when David went down and land right now, trying to kick us out of our own country, put their own leaders in there and deprive us of our bounty, our fortune. But David comes in, and they're laughing at him. All David was supposed to do, his mom says, hey, take some crackers and cheese over to your brothers and bring them lunch while they're fighting the invaders. And so that was his whole assignment. Here, you're just the sheep herding kid.
Right.
You're the runt. Take some crackers and cheese in a paper bag over to your brothers, and while they fight, these invaders. So he shows up, and everybody's quaking in their boots because Goliath, the giant, is out there mocking them, and he's taunting them. Just send me one person to fight me, and if he wins, then we won't come after you. Just send me. You don't have to fight my whole army. Just fight me. Come on, just send one person out here so I can have a fair match. I haven't had a good match all day. Come on, I want to work up a sweat. It's exercise for me. Send me out somebody that can fight me, that's actually capable of doing that. And so everybody's quaking in their boots, trying to say, you gonna go out there? No, you gonna go out there? Are you kidding me? I'm not going to fight that giant. Shoot, he's twice as big as me. He can lift 4 times what we can. It's a giant. His sword's as tall as we are as people. I'm not going out there to fight him. And so they're all quaking in their boots. David shows up with the lunch bag in his hand. Hey, what's going on? How are you guys doing on the fight? Oh, the giant Goliath is out there taunting us. He's making fun of us. We don't stand a chance. And so David says, well, stupid moron. And so David says, no, I've got the skill. I've got the skill sets. I can do it. And I will even compare this. Oh my gosh, people will be rolling their eyes in their head and blowing a gasket. But, I'll compare that to Trump. President Trump came into this race. Nobody gave him a chance. He hasn't got any body armor. He doesn't even know how to wear it. Well, excuse me. but maybe he didn't need it. You know, what's the body armor in the political sense? He doesn't have a whole bunch of politicians backing him up, protecting him on all sides that agree with anything he's going to say. You know, president's just not one person. It's a whole team. Well, he hadn't been in office. He hadn't paid his dues. He hadn't made his bones. Are you kidding me? And he's going to take on the machine, the giant. He's going to go and win and get to Washington. Are you kidding me? He doesn't stand a chance. And President Trump comes on. He's the underdog by far. You know, what, 25 people running for president. They're all a bunch of nitwits and assholes. Jeb Bush has, you know, more money than Hillary Clinton had. People forget that. He had more money than Hillary Clinton had. And he comes in there and he's going to, you know, walk away with it. Well, just because you had money didn't mean you could win. And just because you had political allies, as Trump proved, didn't mean you could win. The American people, in large measure, decided they'd had enough of that crap. And those people that were supposedly out there defending Israel with all their armor, all the good food, the tents, hanging out, they're there for, you know, a couple of weeks, getting ready for the battle. The bad guys are taunting them, making fun of them, teasing them. And you got to think about it. The bad guys actually didn't really want to take on that whole army. They were taunting, but at the end of the day, they just wanted to have a one-on-one because they knew that no one person was big enough to take them on physically the way they do the fight with swords and armor and battle axes. Mm-hmm. What was unique about what David did? He didn't come in and fight the war their way.
That's right.
Okay? He owned the media. He didn't buy it. He owned it, but not in the same way that they did. He did it with subtle little things. The audacity that people cry out about Trump. Well, it's just ridiculous he'd make a statement like that. It's just ridiculous he'd do this and that and the other thing. Yeah, but you know what? They were forced to cover it.
Yeah.
And in the media, there's an old saying, there is no such thing as bad news. So he got all the news. Everybody had to contend with him. His subtle little ways of doing stuff actually brought him the press, and then he could have the rest of the conversation. And oh, by the way, the people bought into it. Here's one little thing people miss. When David went down to the creek, he gathered 5 round stones from the creek. He didn't just get one. He didn't just arm himself with 1 stone for Goliath. Well, they think, oh, he got 5 in case he missed the first time. He didn't get 1 stone when he was down at the river gathering stones. He got 5 rounded river rocks. They roll in the river, they roll in the river, they roll in the river. And eventually they get augured down to where they're round. And he carefully picked each stone. But why 5? There was a symbolic meaning to that. He didn't just go after Goliath. People lose this. Goliath had a brother.
That's right.
And between them, they had 3 sons. It was Goliath and the brother and the sons. And David had a rock for each of them. What do you think's going on with this election? Trump got it. We just had more people that voted for Trump. And was so many more than the steal that they had in place that they didn't steal enough to win. So they came back for this one, and they had to steal so bigly that it just became so blatant, but they pulled it off. But what's happening now? Now people got woke up by that. It's like Gulliver was all tied down by these ropes, and suddenly he kind of wakes up and he notices, hey, I can't move my head too easily. And by the way, my arm's kind of held down a little bit here and there. And they're, dictating to him terms, and they've got the, podium stood up right by his head, and the Lilliputians are there. No, you're going to do this, and you're going to do that, and we're not going to put up with this and that, and you're going to have to mind this, and we're going to blah, blah. You know, oh, really? And all of a sudden, the American people are suddenly waking up and going, what the fuck is going on around here?
Yeah.
Who is doing this? They're coming out of their sleep. Hey, they've been drugged. They've been MK Ultra by the media, and they've been put into a catatonic state. And all of a sudden, the American people are kind of going, whoa, what in the world? Are you kidding me? And they're coming awake, some quicker than others. Now, this is where it gets really tense. Those of us that are waking up, you know, go ahead and wiggle your feet, wiggle your hands, get your heart rate up a little bit. But we got a few folks. You ever had, you know, you ever woken up out of a sleep and your leg is still asleep because it was sitting in a wrong position, and all of a sudden you go to stand up on it, it's like standing up on a board that's not even connected to you.
Yeah.
I mean, your arm goes to sleep. Hey, we got factions of our society. They're still useful. They're still critically important. They're still attached to us, and they're not gone forever. They just aren't awake yet. So give it a moment. Let's get some blood circulation going, and then let's go kick some ass. Because these assholes have been stealing your country right out from underneath you. They're banking on us not waking up. Gonna pop them like a hot pimple on their ass. Fuck.
Yeah.
It's so frustrating.
It's so
that we're
frustrating.
supposed to just take it. Are you kidding me? No way.
Well, Juan, the more you know, the more you're frustrated. So I can understand my level of frustration, and I can't even imagine what yours is.
Well, and then you got a bunch of know-it-alls. You know, Trump didn't do this, and he's so weak, and he was afraid of his shadow. He saw his shadow there in the White House. He wouldn't do anything. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
What a fucking bunch of morons to even talk like that. Come on, man, get your head out of your ass. The president was very aware of what was at stake. This has been gamed out on supercomputers repeatedly over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
The way they got control of America and America's commerce and the politics is they had been gaming this out on computers with AIs for a couple of decades. Mm-hmm. Working through these things to get control of industry, to get control of the media, to get control of production and the industrial complex.
100%.
And this is not as haphazard as it appears to most people. This was a very tightly, well orchestrated, by design capture of America, war by another means, by our enemies, with a very real satanic component to it, evil component to it, and literally to farm us as humanity, because we're right at that hinge point in history where either we get control of how we govern ourselves as human beings, or the machines and the monsters are able to capture us in this Tholian web, a Star Trek term, a great one, that we won't ever break out of. We're right at that hinge point where once it's complete, barring some divine act of God out of our imaginations, a possibility, we would never break free of it. This is that moment where we have to recapture the high ground. Gulliver has to look, even though they were small ropes and pegs in the Gulliver story, if Gulliver hadn't gotten up when he did, given some time, they may very well have gotten bigger ropes, deeper pegs, more of them, to where he couldn't have broke free. So, that possibility was there. And there's a moment where all of a sudden you've waited too long to act. But we're within that room right now where we can act and regain our sovereignty and throw off these controls and stop this vampiristic stealing of our blood, our lifeblood, our energy for their purposes, and this diversion of our life to their purposes. President Trump wasn't wrong not to take certain actions back December 18th. The American people weren't fully awake yet, and to act, it's as wrong to act too early as it is to act too late. And you have to have the right timing. President Trump was acting under the advice of others on the other side of the firewall. Get the fuck over it. If you don't understand it, I'm sorry, but it's just the way it is. I don't care if you're super smart, super connected, know all of this stuff, all the details and everything else. You're wrong. And he wasn't wrong to hold till he sees the whites of their eyes. The revelations that have come over the last many months, including the revelations of just how crooked, how corrupt the political system is, how captured the court system is. We just weren't quite there yet. And we're gaining ground, but even now, we've got a ways to go. It's painfully hard. Not enough of the American people are awake yet. We don't want civil war.